Welcome to The Billionaire's Life, the podcast that goes beyond the headlines to dissect the realities of extreme wealth. We're on a multi-episode journey to answer a fundamental question: what really separates the daily existence of a billionaire from that of an average person?
We're moving past the caricatures of private jets and lavish parties to build a comprehensive side-by-side comparison of two vastly different worlds. Our goal is to deconstruct the habits, the decisions, and the hidden structures that define these lives. We want to understand the cause and effect, not just the flashy outcomes.
And there's no better place to start than the very foundation of any life, wealthy or otherwise, the daily routine. It's the blueprint upon which everything else is built. So today, we're exploring the fabric of their 24 hours. We'll look at their disciplined morning rituals, the incredible flexibility and control they have over their work hours, and the powerful systems they build for productivity and unwavering focus.
Exactly, because how a person allocates their time is the single greatest indicator of their priorities. And as we'll see, the ultra-wealthy don't just manage their time, they architect it with a level of intention that is almost surgical. The principles we uncover today will serve as the bedrock for understanding the more complex topics we'll tackle later in this series.
Let's begin at the beginning then. The sound of the alarm clock. For most people, the morning is a race against time, a frantic rush of getting ready, managing family needs, and battling a commute. It's a reactive state. But for many of the world's wealthiest individuals, the morning is something else entirely. It's protected, strategic time.
That's the key word, strategic. While many average workers might wake up closer to their start time, research and insider accounts consistently show a pattern of early rising among billionaires, often by 7 a.m. or even earlier. But the critical difference isn't just the time on the clock, it's what they do with that time. They are treating their first waking hours as their most valuable and uncorrupted asset of the day.
Uncorrupted by what?
By the demands of others. Before the emails start flooding in, before the phone starts ringing with problems to be solved, they carve out a space for activities that are important, but not necessarily urgent. This often includes exercise, which is non-negotiable for many, not for vanity, but for mental clarity and stamina. It includes reading, not just news headlines, but books, industry reports, and deep dive analyses. And most importantly, it involves planning and strategic thinking.
So while the average person's morning is about output, getting things done to get out the door, the billionaire's morning is about input and preparation. They are loading the strategic software for the day before the world has a chance to impose its own chaotic operating system on them.
A perfect analogy. Think of it this way. The average person's morning is a sprint on a treadmill that someone else set the speed for. You're just trying to keep up. The billionaire's morning is like a quiet, solitary walk through a landscape they own. They get to survey the terrain, check the path ahead, and decide which direction they will travel and at what pace, long before they invite anyone else to join them on the journey. They are working on their life, not just in it.
This proactive versus reactive dynamic seems to be a recurring theme, and it logically extends into the workday itself. The 9-to-5 structure is the backbone of modern professional life for billions of people. It's a fixed container. You pour your work into it, and when it's full, you go home. This isn't the model for the ultra-wealthy.
Not at all. The defining characteristic of their work schedule is absolute ownership and flexibility. An assistant to a billionaire once noted that her boss could, on a whim, clear his entire afternoon for a personal matter, or, conversely, decide at 6 p.m. to work through the night on a new idea. That freedom is a form of power that is almost unimaginable to a typical employee who has to request time off weeks in advance for a doctor's appointment.
But does flexibility just mean working less? I think that's a common misconception.
Absolutely not. In fact, they often work incredibly long and intense hours. Weekends, late nights, those are all on the table. The difference is agency. The work is dictated by the project's needs and their own energy, not by a predetermined, arbitrary block of time. A typical employee is paid for their presence during a set schedule. A billionaire is focused solely on results, and they will bend time itself to achieve them.
So they might work a 14-hour day on a Tuesday if a deal is closing, but then take all of Wednesday morning off to spend with their family without needing to justify it to anyone. Their schedule is a tool, not a cage.
Precisely. Let's use a construction analogy. The average worker is given a standard toolbox with a hammer, a screwdriver, and a wrench. They can do good work, but they're limited by those tools and must use them in a prescribed way. A billionaire has a massive, state-of-the-art workshop. They have every tool imaginable, and they can custom build a new one if needed. Their schedule is that workshop. It's a dynamic, fluid resource they can reconfigure at a moment's notice to tackle any problem or seize any opportunity. This gives them a colossal advantage in speed and agility.
This leads us to the heart of the matter: productivity. If they have this incredible control over their time, how do they ensure that time is spent effectively? It's one thing to have free time, it's another to convert it into a billion-dollar enterprise. Many people dream of having more free time, but they might just spend it on leisure.
This is where we see perhaps the most significant structural difference in their daily lives: the aggressive and masterful use of delegation. The ultra-wealthy don't just delegate tasks they don't like, they delegate everything that isn't their absolute highest impact function. They build a human infrastructure around them specifically designed to protect their time and focus.
And the linchpin of this infrastructure is often the executive assistant. We've heard the term pit bull assistant used to describe these individuals. This isn't just someone who manages a calendar.
No, this is a strategic partner. A high-level executive assistant for a billionaire acts as a gatekeeper, a buffer, and an operator. They manage the household, they vet the calls, they schedule the travel, they handle the trivial decisions. They create a friction-free existence for their boss so that 100% of their cognitive energy can be directed toward the few decisions that truly matter, the ones that can generate millions or billions in value.
The research supports this, showing how they live and breathe their projects. They develop an obsessive level of knowledge about their subject because their entire world is curated to allow for that level of immersion. An average professional, in contrast, has to fragment their attention constantly. They're doing their core job, but they're also booking their own travel, submitting expense reports, dealing with IT problems, and managing household logistics. Their focus is perpetually fractured.
It's the difference between being a specialist and a generalist, but amplified to an extreme degree. Imagine a world-class Olympic sprinter. Their entire life is optimized for that one goal. They have nutritionists, coaches, physiotherapists, and psychologists. All they have to do is focus on running. They don't have to worry about booking the stadium, inspecting the track, or cooking their own meals. That is the kind of support system a billionaire builds for their work.
So the productivity secret isn't a magic app or a time management hack. It's building a team whose primary job is to eliminate distractions.
It's about leverage. They are leveraging other people's time and talent to buy back their own. An average person trades their time for money. A billionaire uses their money to buy time, both directly by hiring staff and indirectly by using things like private jets to turn a 5-hour travel ordeal into a 90-minute productive meeting in the sky. Every decision is filtered through the lens of time valuation. They understand that while they can always make more money, they can never make more time.
So when we pull back and look at these three areas, morning rituals, schedule control, and leveraged focus, a clear picture emerges. It's a life built on a foundation of proactive, intentional design.
That's the key takeaway. The profound difference in their daily routine is not about waking up earlier or working harder in the conventional sense. It is about building a deliberate, all-encompassing system to maximize the impact of every minute of their existence. Their mornings are for strategy, not reaction. Their schedules are fluid tools, not rigid containers, and their focus is protected by a fortress of delegation.
It's a complete paradigm shift from how most of the world operates. The average person's day is largely dictated by external forces: the boss's demands, the commute, the school run. The billionaire's day is dictated, as much as humanly possible, by their own internal objectives.
And understanding this foundation is crucial, because the structure of their day is what allows for the development of the unique mindset we're going to explore in our next episode. The daily routine is the how, but the mindset is the why.
A perfect transition. Now that we've seen the architecture of their day, we need to examine the mind that designs it. We'll be diving into the billionaire mindset and their approach to decision-making. We'll explore their capacity for relentless, single-minded focus on one major objective and how that differs from the jack-of-all-trades reality for most people.
We'll also dissect their relationship with risk, how they take calculated leaps by leveraging other people's money and timing the market in ways that seem terrifying to the average cautious saver. We'll look at how their valuation of time and talent shapes who they hire and what they're willing to pay.
And finally, we'll discuss their long-term vision, the ability to think in terms of decades, not fiscal quarters, and to build empires that span multiple industries. So join us next time on The Billionaire's Life as we move from the calendar to the mind and uncover the psychological framework that powers extreme success. Welcome to The Billionaire's Life, where we dissect the hidden realities that separate the super rich from the rest of us. In our last episode, we explored the highly structured daily routines of billionaires, the early mornings, the obsessive scheduling, the intense productivity hacks. But a routine is just the what. Today, we're diving deeper into the why. What is the underlying operating system, the mindset that drives those actions?
Exactly. A routine is a vehicle, but the mindset is the engine and the navigation system all in one. It's one thing to know that someone schedules their day in 5-minute blocks, but it's another thing entirely to understand the mental framework that makes such a practice not just possible, but logical. Today, we're peeling back the layers on the psychology of extreme wealth and success. We'll be examining 4 critical pillars of the billionaire mindset: their relentless, singular focus, their calculated approach to risk and strategy, their profound understanding of the value of time and talent, and finally, their ability to maintain a decades-long vision.
These aren't just personality quirks. They are practiced, deliberate ways of thinking that compound over time. Understanding them is crucial because it connects the external habits we discussed previously to the internal architecture of decision-making. It's the bridge between what they do and how they think.
Precisely. Let's start with that first pillar, relentless focus. When we say focus, we're not just talking about avoiding distractions for an hour to finish a task. For many of these individuals, it's a complete immersion into a single, all-consuming objective, often for years. They aim to master their industry from the ground up, inside and out.
And this stands in stark contrast to the daily experience of most people who are forced to multitask. The average professional is juggling a career, family responsibilities, personal projects, continuing education. Their attention is necessarily fragmented. They have to be a jack of all trades to keep their life running.
That's the perfect way to put it. Think of it like a laser versus a floodlight. A floodlight can illuminate a whole room, which is useful and necessary for everyday life. That's the average person, spreading their mental energy across a wide array of responsibilities. But a billionaire's focus is a laser. It concentrates all of its energy onto a single, tiny point with such intensity that it can cut through steel. They pour themselves into one big objective, and that singular focus allows them to go deeper and progress faster than anyone else. While others are broadly competent, they become the undisputed master of one domain.
That mastery then gives them the confidence to make bigger moves, which brings us to our second point, risk and strategy. There's a common misconception that billionaires are just reckless gamblers, but the accounts we see suggest something far more deliberate. They are willing to take risks, but they are highly calculated.
Calculated is the key word. It's not about adrenaline, it's about asymmetry. They look for opportunities with a limited, manageable downside and a potentially enormous upside. An insider on a Reddit AMA mentioned how billionaires he knew timed the market well and, crucially, leveraged other people's money to build their ventures. This insulates their personal capital and allows them to weather downturns that would wipe out a smaller, self-funded entrepreneur.
So while an average person might save cautiously and make small, safe investments to build a retirement nest egg, a future billionaire is thinking about how to use financial instruments and investment capital to build an empire. The entire scale of the game is different.
It is. It's like the difference between a coastal sailor and a transoceanic explorer. The average person is like a sailor with a small but reliable boat. They stick close to the coastline where it's safe. They can see the land, they can avoid the worst of the storms, and they'll make steady, predictable progress. Their risk is low, but their journey is confined to familiar shores. A billionaire, on the other hand, is the captain of a massive vessel built for crossing oceans. They are venturing into the deep, unpredictable waters far from the sight of land. It looks incredibly risky from the shore, but the captain isn't just hoping for the best. They're equipped with sophisticated navigation tools, market data, expert analysis, economic forecasts. They have a deep understanding of weather patterns or market cycles. They know when to hoist the sails to catch a powerful wind, an emerging trend, and when to batten down the hatches to ride out a storm. The risk is immense, but the reward isn't just a new port, it's a new world. They aren't gambling, they are navigating.
And to navigate that journey successfully, you need the best possible crew and the most efficient vessel. This leads directly into our third concept, the value billionaires place on time and talent. We've all heard the phrase, time is money, but for the ultra-rich, it seems to be the other way around. Money is a tool to create time.
Absolutely. For most people, money is a finite resource. They trade their time for it. For a billionaire, time is the truly finite, non-renewable resource. Money, especially when you have a lot of it, can always be generated, borrowed, or raised. Time cannot. Once an hour is gone, it's gone forever. This fundamentally changes their decision-making. They will spend seemingly exorbitant amounts of money to save a few hours.
We have anecdotes to back this up. One account mentioned that 2 out of 3 self-made billionaires he knew used private jets, not as a luxury, but as a business tool to save travel time and be more productive. Meanwhile, the average person will drive across town to save a few dollars on gas or spend hours searching for the cheapest flight.
It extends to talent, too. A billionaire will pay whatever it takes to hire the absolute best person for a job, no matter where they are in the world. Their budget for talent is effectively unlimited because they understand that an A player will generate a return that dwarfs their salary. The average person or small business owner is constrained by a tight budget and is often limited to hiring from their local talent pool.
It's a completely different approach to resource allocation.
Let me offer an analogy for this one. Imagine the task is to build a magnificent, one-of-a-kind house. The average person approaches this like a DIY project with some help. To save money, they'll do the painting themselves, maybe lay the flooring, and spend weeks researching the most affordable local contractors for the plumbing and electrical work. Their primary constraint is their budget, and their goal is to get the best house possible for the least amount of money. A billionaire approaches this as an architect and a developer. They don't touch a single brick. Their goal is to build the greatest house in the world in the shortest time possible. Their primary constraint is time. So they hire the Pritzker Prize-winning architect from Spain, the world-renowned structural engineer from Japan, and the celebrity interior designer from France. They pay to fly them all in and put them up. They don't ask for quotes to compare prices. They ask, what do you need to do your best work? They understand that paying a premium for the top 1% of talent will save them years of costly mistakes and result in a far superior asset. They're buying expertise to save time and ensure quality.
The final product is not just a house, but a landmark. And that mindset, building a landmark, not just a house, is a perfect segue to our final topic, long-term vision. It seems that while most people operate on a timeline of months or maybe a few years, billionaires are thinking in decades.
Decades, absolutely. Jeff Bezos famously ran Amazon with minimal profits for years, reinvesting everything into long-term market dominance, much to the frustration of short-sighted investors. This is a pattern we see again and again. They conquer one sector and then, instead of retiring, they use their capital, influence, and knowledge to pivot and start conquering another. Look at Elon Musk with PayPal, then Tesla, SpaceX, and more. This contrasts sharply with the average worker, who typically follows a single, linear career path until retirement.
It's the ability to see the entire chessboard, not just the next move. And it requires immense resilience, the ability to absorb failures and setbacks as learning opportunities on a much longer journey.
I think the most powerful analogy here is the difference between playing checkers and playing grandmaster chess. The average person's career path is like a game of checkers. The goal is clear and linear: get your pieces across the board, capture your opponent's pieces, and become a king. It's a single game on a single board. The rules are straightforward and the time frame is limited. A billionaire is playing chess on multiple boards simultaneously against multiple opponents over a timeline that might span their entire life. They might willingly sacrifice a pawn, take a calculated short-term loss on a project if it gives them a better position on the board 5 years from now. They aren't just trying to win the current game, they're trying to build a dynasty. Their vision isn't about reaching the other side of the board, it's about controlling the entire room of chessboards. This big-picture mindset, this ability to plan for the next decade while everyone else is planning for the next quarter, is perhaps the most defining characteristic that sets them apart.
So, to summarize, we have 4 interconnected mindsets. A relentless, laser-like focus that allows for mastery. A strategic, navigational approach to risk that seeks massive, asymmetric rewards. A view of time as the ultimate non-renewable asset, justifying enormous spending on efficiency and talent. And a decades-long, multi-generational vision that treats careers and businesses like a grandmaster chess match.
And what's fascinating is how these powerful, almost mechanical ways of thinking about business and wealth inevitably bleed into the more personal, human aspects of their lives. A mind that is wired to calculate risk, optimize for time, and plan 30 years ahead doesn't just switch off at the end of the workday.
That's a compelling and slightly unsettling thought. How does a person who views relationships through the lens of leverage and long-term strategy navigate something as unquantifiable as love or friendship? How does a parent obsessed with efficiency and optimization raise a child in a world that is inherently messy and unpredictable?
Those are precisely the questions we'll be tackling in our next episode. We'll move from the boardroom to the living room and explore the profound impact this billionaire mindset has on relationships, family, and the search for trust in a world where everyone might have an agenda. It's a side of their lives that is far more complex and often far more troubled. Join us next time on The Billionaire's Life.
Welcome to The Billionaire's Life, where we pull back the curtain on the realities that separate the super rich from the rest of us. In our last episode, we dissected the billionaire mindset, that relentless focus and long-term vision that builds empires. But what happens when that same mindset is applied to the most intimate parts of life?
That's the core question for today. If your entire world is structured around optimization, calculated risks, and valuing time above all else, how does that shape your relationships with the people you're supposed to love unconditionally? It's a side of wealth that's far less glamorous than the private jets and yachts. Today, we're exploring the profound, often hidden differences in the family lives, friendships, and social circles of billionaires compared to the average person.
We'll be looking at how immense wealth impacts marriage and personal relationships. We'll then explore the unique challenges of billionaire parenting. From there, we'll dive into the pervasive issue of trust and how it shapes their social circles. And finally, we'll discuss the surprising and often overlooked consequence of having it all: profound isolation.
Understanding these dynamics is crucial because it moves beyond the stereotype of the lonely billionaire. It reveals a structural reality. The very things that enable financial success, as we discussed last time, can create deep systemic challenges in one's personal life. It's a paradox. The more you have, the harder it can be to form the genuine connections that humans need to thrive.
Let's start with the most foundational relationship: marriage and personal partnerships. There's a common assumption that financial stress is a major driver of divorce, so one might think billionaires have a distinct advantage.
You would think so, and to a point, you'd be right. Financial stability does reduce a major source of marital strain. Couples with fewer assets are significantly more likely to divorce. However, once you reach the highest echelons of wealth, that advantage seems to vanish. One analysis by Forbes found that the divorce rate for the 50 richest people in the United States was 49%, right in line with the national average. But when you compare them to other high-income, college-educated couples who have much lower divorce rates, around 30%, you see a stark difference. Marital success seems to improve with wealth, but only up to a point, and then it plummets.
So it's not the money itself, but something that comes with it. The content for this episode mentioned a few anecdotes. One billionaire divorced 4 times, another unhappily married, and only one happily married to a college sweetheart. That suggests a very volatile landscape.
Exactly. Think of it this way. For most people, marriage is a bit like a small startup. 2 partners come together with limited resources, they wear multiple hats, they build something together through shared struggle and sacrifice, and their success is deeply intertwined with their mutual support. A billionaire's marriage, on the other hand, can more closely resemble a corporate merger between 2 powerful entities.
That's a powerful analogy. Unpack that for me.
Well, in a corporate merger, you're not just blending 2 cultures, you're consolidating massive assets. There are teams of lawyers, prenuptial agreements that function like shareholder agreements, and concerns about brand image and public perception. The stakes are astronomical. Decisions aren't just about personal feelings, they're about legacy, financial implications, and dynastic planning. The partnership can become transactional. When the relentless drive and focus that built the fortune are turned inward, it can be incredibly corrosive to intimacy.
This transactional nature seems to bleed into parenting as well. The provided content points to a desire among the ultra-wealthy to shield their children from hardship, to prevent suffering. On the surface, that sounds like what any loving parent would want.
It does, but the execution can be deeply problematic. This is where the concept of affluenza comes in, a term used to describe the psychological issues, like a lack of motivation and a sense of entitlement, that can affect children from wealthy families. When parents remove all obstacles, they also remove the opportunity for their children to develop resilience, grit, and self-esteem, which are born from struggle and overcoming failure.
So by trying to create a perfect, frictionless world for their kids, they inadvertently prevent them from developing the very skills that the parents were successful in the first place.
Precisely. Imagine trying to grow a champion redwood tree inside a greenhouse. You protect it from wind, drought, and pests. It might grow tall, but its root system will be shallow and weak. The moment it's exposed to a real storm, it will topple. Regular parents, often out of necessity, expose their children to financial storms. Kids learn that resources are finite, that hard work is required to get what you want, and that failure is a part of life you learn from. They develop deep, strong roots. Therapists who work with the super-rich see the opposite. Kids who become adults with low self-confidence and an inability to cope with setbacks because they've never been allowed to experience them.
And this leads directly to the next point, which is the problem of trust. If you're raised in a protected bubble, never having to navigate the real world, how do you learn to judge character? How do you know who to trust?
You often don't, and that becomes one of the most defining and painful realities of extreme wealth. There is a constant, nagging question that haunts the super-rich. Do they like me for me or for my money? A psychotherapist for billionaires noted that they often distrust others by default, assuming every relationship might have a financial motive. Their relationships are constantly defined by what they can provide for others, not by who they are as people.
That sounds exhausting. It's like you can never let your guard down. Every new person is a potential threat or an opportunist. While an average person might take a new friendship at face value, a billionaire is conditioned to look for the hidden agenda.
It's a form of hypervigilance. Think of it as a social immune system. For most of us, our immune system is relaxed. We assume most things we encounter are harmless, and it only kicks in when a real threat appears. For a billionaire, the immune system is in overdrive, treating every new person like a potential pathogen. This isn't just paranoia, it's a defense mechanism built from years of being bombarded by requests, targeted by opportunists, and having their wealth become the central feature of their identity in the eyes of others.
And this constant distrust, this inability to form genuine connections without suspicion, must lead to the final topic, a profound sense of isolation.
It's almost inevitable. Wealth creates distance, literally and emotionally. They live in gated communities, travel on private jets, and join exclusive clubs. This creates a very small, self-reinforcing bubble. Research has even shown that lower-income individuals spend significantly more of their time socializing than their wealthy counterparts, who spend more time alone.
So it's not just a feeling of being alone, they are in fact more alone. They network primarily with other elites, people who they feel can understand their unique problems, and crucially, who don't want anything from them financially.
Correct. While this might seem like a solution to the trust problem, it only deepens the isolation from the rest of society. Their world shrinks. Their children go to elite schools and universities, developing a unique culture and even language among their own kind, which can further inhibit their ability to connect with people outside that circle. It becomes a gilded cage. You have the freedom to go anywhere and do anything, yet your world is incredibly small and walled off. That's the ultimate paradox. The empathy gap widens because there are simply fewer opportunities to interact with and relate to the daily struggles of ordinary people.
So to summarize, the very mindset that builds extraordinary wealth, a focus on transactions, efficiency, and risk management, can make the messy, inefficient, and vulnerable work of building relationships incredibly difficult. Marriages can become like mergers, parenting can strip children of resilience, and a deep-seated distrust can poison friendships before they even begin.
And all of these threads weave together to create a tapestry of isolation. The social fabric for a billionaire is fundamentally different. It's built not on open community ties, but on layers of security, suspicion, and exclusivity. It's a life with infinite material resources, but often a profound deficit of genuine, unguarded human connection.
It truly underscores that wealth can solve many problems, but it can also create new, more complex ones that money can't fix. And that isolation, that curated bubble-like existence, directly shapes how they interact with the world on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And that's the perfect bridge to our next episode. We've explored their mindset and their relationships. Now we're going to step inside that bubble and look at their actual lifestyle and patterns of consumption. From so-called quiet luxury and personal service staff to the way they give gifts, we'll see how this insulated world manifests in their everyday choices, possessions, and experiences.
It's a world most of us can only imagine, and we're going to dissect what it truly looks like from the inside. Join us next time on The Billionaire's Life. Welcome to The Billionaire's Life, where we pull back the curtain on a world that few will ever experience. In our last conversation, we explored the intricate and often isolating world of billionaire relationships, dissecting how immense wealth can reshape the very foundations of family, trust, and friendship. We talked about the emotional bubble that wealth creates.
And today, we're going to examine the physical manifestation of that bubble. We're stepping inside their homes, their jets, their lives, to understand not just what they own, but how they consume. It raises a fascinating question. When you can have literally anything, what do you choose? And what do those choices say about the reality of your life? We'll be looking at the sheer scale of their possessions, the subtle art of quiet luxury, the invisible army of personal staff that makes it all possible, and finally, how even an act of generosity like gift-giving is transformed by wealth.
These aren't just details about extravagance. They are clues that reveal a fundamentally different way of moving through the world. The difference isn't just in degree, it's in kind. It's not about having a nicer car. It's about having a relationship with the very concept of a car that is alien to most of us.
Precisely. Let's start with the most visible aspect, the sheer scale of their luxuries and possessions. For the average person, the goal might be to own a home, maybe a reliable car. These are significant, singular assets that anchor a life.
But in the billionaire's world, the concept of one is almost irrelevant. We're talking about multiple mansions across the globe, each fully staffed and ready at a moment's notice. It's not just a car, it's a collection of vintage Ferraris or a fleet of custom Rolls-Royces. I was struck by an account from a personal assistant who mentioned one of the chauffeurs was tasked with regularly driving the billionaire's Lamborghinis, not for transport, but just to keep the engines in good condition while they sat in the garage.
That anecdote is so revealing. It transforms an object of utility, a car for getting from point A to point B, into something more akin to a museum piece or a thoroughbred horse that needs to be exercised. For most people, a car is a tool, probably the second largest purchase they'll ever make. Its value is tied directly to its function. Here, the function is ownership itself. The car has become a pure symbol, completely detached from its practical purpose.
It's the difference between a tool and an asset. For most, a home is the primary shelter and the heart of family life. For the ultra-rich, a portfolio of properties serves different strategic purposes. A penthouse in New York for business, a villa in the south of France for summer, a ranch in Wyoming for privacy. They are nodes in a global network of their life, not a single central anchor.
It's like the difference between having a kitchen garden and owning an industrial farm. The average person might have a small plot in their backyard to grow some tomatoes. It's personal, requires their direct effort, and the output is for their own consumption. A billionaire owns the equivalent of an agricultural conglomerate. They don't till the soil, they manage a system that produces a vast surplus. The relationship to the thing, whether it's a vegetable or a house, is one of management and oversight, not direct personal interaction.
And this scale extends to everything. The shopping list isn't about groceries. It's about commissioning custom furniture from a world-renowned designer, acquiring a specific piece of art at auction to complete a collection, or even outfitting a private home with a high-tech lab that rivals a university. The budget isn't a constraint, it's just a number.
Which leads to a very interesting evolution in taste. When you can afford the flashiest, most logo-covered item from any brand in the world, that often ceases to be the goal. The truly wealthy often move beyond that into a world of what's known as quiet luxury.
This is a critical distinction. Mainstream luxury is about broadcasting wealth to a wide audience. It's the recognizable watch, the car everyone knows is expensive, the handbag with the prominent logo. It's a signal of arrival. But for those who have long since arrived, the audience changes. They are no longer signaling to the general public, they are signaling to each other.
Exactly. Quiet luxury is a language spoken only by the initiated. It's the cashmere sweater with no logo that costs $5,000. It's the bespoke suit with hand stitching on the inside that only a tailor would recognize. It's about material quality, craftsmanship, and exclusivity that is intentionally invisible to the untrained eye. It's a way of saying, I don't need to prove anything to you.
There's a story from a luxury travel planner that perfectly illustrates this. His clients, a billionaire couple, wanted a simple, private dinner. That simple dinner involved buying out one of the city's most exclusive restaurants for the entire evening. They arrived in a nondescript, though incredibly expensive, Rolls-Royce. The chef created a bespoke tasting menu just for them, based on ingredients flown in that morning. The final bill was over $10,000 for 2 people.
And in their minds, this wasn't a flashy, extravagant act, it was a refined experience. The luxury wasn't in the spectacle, it was in the seamlessness, the privacy, and the absolute perfection of the service. It's the luxury of removing all friction from an experience. For the average person, a nice night out involves looking at reviews, making a reservation, dealing with a crowded restaurant, and choosing from a set menu. The billionaire's experience is about curating reality itself.
This curation is the real product. It's not the food, it's the guarantee of the best table, the quietest room, the chef's undivided attention. In contrast, the average consumer is driven by a search for value and convenience. We read reviews, compare prices, and look for the best possible experience within a certain budget. Their decision-making process is a quest for the unique and the frictionless, regardless of cost.
It's the difference between buying a ticket to a concert and having the band play in your living room. Both are ways of hearing music, but one is a public, shared experience with inherent compromises, while the other is a completely controlled, private performance. This desire for a frictionless life is impossible without a hidden infrastructure of people.
And that brings us to the army of personal services that underpins this entire lifestyle. The ultimate luxury isn't a yacht or a jet, it's buying back your time and outsourcing 100% of life's daily inconveniences. We're talking about a level of delegation that is hard for most people to even comprehend.
Absolutely. It starts with the basics you might expect: housekeepers, gardeners, nannies, but it quickly scales up. There's the personal chef who knows your exact dietary preferences and creates restaurant-quality meals 3 times a day. There's the personal trainer who shows up at your private gym at 5 a.m. There's the team of personal assistants managing your schedule down to the minute. One Billionaire's PA described her boss's household as a seamless machine, with staff on call 24/7 to cater to any whim.
The world of private aviation is a particularly stark example. When most of us fly, we are one of hundreds of passengers. The flight attendants are performing a complex logistical task for a large group. On a private jet, the flight attendant's role completely transforms. They become a one-person crew dedicated entirely to you. They are your personal chef, your bartender, your butler, your nanny for your children, and your concierge, all at 40,000 feet. The level of personalized, predictive service is absolute.
It creates a reality where your needs are met before you even fully articulate them. This has a profound psychological effect. For most people, daily life involves a constant stream of low-level problem solving. What's for dinner? The car needs gas. The house needs cleaning. This constant engagement with mundane tasks builds resilience, self-reliance, and basic life skills. When you outsource all of that, you exist on a different plane, a strategic level. Your only job is to provide the high-level direction for your life.
It's the difference between being a soldier on the ground and being the general in the command tent. The general doesn't worry about cleaning his weapon or cooking his rations. He has a support structure for that. His entire focus is on the big picture. This can be incredibly effective for business or other high-level pursuits, but it also creates a profound disconnect from the lived reality of 99.9% of the world.
And this disconnect can show up in surprising ways, even in something as fundamental as gift-giving. You would think that with unlimited resources, a billionaire would give the most incredible, thoughtful, personalized gifts imaginable.
But insider accounts often paint a very different picture. One assistant recounted how, for the holidays, the employees at the billionaire's family office didn't receive personal gifts or a simple bonus. Instead, they each received a crate of high-end company-branded merchandise, Yeti coolers, Patagonia jackets, all emblazoned with the company logo.
From the billionaire's perspective, this is probably seen as efficient and generous. These are expensive, high-quality items. But for the employees, the feeling was that the gifts were deeply impersonal. It felt less like a genuine gesture of appreciation and more like a branding exercise. It lacked a human touch.
This transactional nature is the key. Because they can buy anything, the value of money as a tool for showing care can become warped. For an average person, a gift's value is often tied to the time, thought, and effort that went into it. A handmade sweater, a carefully selected book, or a framed photo. These things are meaningful precisely because they require personal investment, something much scarcer than money.
It's the difference between commissioning a fleet of identical gifts and spending an afternoon searching for the one perfect present for a specific person. When you can just order expensive swag by the case, the act of giving becomes another delegated task, another line item on a budget. It reflects the same emotional distance we talked about in our last episode on relationships, a life so optimized and scaled that it can squeeze out the small, inefficient, deeply human gestures that bind people together.
So when we look at the whole picture, the sprawling estates, the understated luxury, the invisible staff, the impersonal generosity, a clear pattern emerges. The billionaire lifestyle isn't just an amplified version of a normal life. It is a qualitatively different existence. It's a life defined by the management of scale, the aggressive outsourcing of inconvenience, and the construction of a perfectly curated, frictionless reality.
And that curated reality, that bubble, has enormous consequences. By paying to have every need met and every problem solved by a professional, they are systematically removed from the social fabric that most of us rely on. You don't need to ask a neighbor to borrow a tool when you have a full-time property manager. You don't join a community potluck when you have a private chef. This outsourcing of life creates a deep structural isolation.
That idea of buying solutions instead of building community ties is the perfect bridge to our next discussion. This lifestyle doesn't just change how they interact with their possessions, it fundamentally reshapes how they interact with society itself, with the communities outside their gilded gates.
Exactly, and that is what we will explore in our next episode, the social dynamics and networking of the ultra-wealthy. We'll examine their exclusive social circles, the crucial difference between relying on community support versus paid solutions, and how living in this rarefied world can impact their engagement and even their compassion. It's a fascinating look at how they navigate the social world and what that means for the rest of us.
Welcome to the Billionaire's Life, where we pull back the curtain on a world that few will ever experience. In our last episode, we walked through the grand estates and explored the concept of quiet luxury, dissecting the physical reality of a billionaire's lifestyle. But a life of private jets and personal chefs doesn't just change what you own, it fundamentally rewires who you interact with and the very nature of your relationships.
Exactly. The material world and the social world are deeply intertwined. Once you outsource every daily inconvenience and your travel takes you to exclusive enclaves rather than public squares, your social landscape inevitably shrinks and transforms. It raises a profound question. What happens to human connection when it's filtered through the lens of extreme wealth?
That's the central mystery we're exploring today. How does being a billionaire reshape the fundamental dynamics of friendship, community, and even compassion? We'll be looking at the exclusive, insulated circles they move in, and why their social networks look so different from the average person's.
We'll also examine a fascinating divergence, the shift from relying on community support to simply purchasing paid solutions for life's problems, and what that does to neighborhood ties. Then we'll touch on some surprising and perhaps controversial research about the relationship between wealth, empathy, and social engagement.
And finally, we'll explore how perception itself changes, how the simple act of walking into a room or being in a crowd is a completely different experience when you're one of the wealthiest people on the planet. This isn't just about having different friends, it's about operating within an entirely different social paradigm.
And understanding this paradigm is crucial because it builds directly on our discussion of their lifestyle. The why behind their consumption is often linked to the who in their social circles. It's all part of the same ecosystem of wealth.
Let's start with those circles. We all have a social network, but studies and anecdotal evidence paint a picture of billionaire social life that is incredibly insular. Research has shown that wealthier Americans, for instance, tend to spend significantly more time with friends, but notably less time with their families or their neighbors. It's a curated social life.
It is. Think of an average person's social network as a sprawling, slightly wild community garden. It's rooted in a specific place, your neighborhood, your town. It's diverse. You have your family, who are like the deep-rooted perennials you didn't choose but are always there. You have your colleagues, maybe some hearty vegetables you see every day. You have neighbors you chat with over the fence, the local wildflowers. It's organic, a bit messy, and sustained by mutual support.
A billionaire's social network, by contrast, is more like a meticulously curated greenhouse. Every plant is chosen for a specific reason: its pedigree, its value, its potential for growth. The other plants are all of a similar, exceptional caliber. It's not rooted in a local community, but is a transportable collection of prized assets. The guest list for a party in New York is functionally identical to the one for a fundraiser in Geneva or a conference in Davos.
And the barrier to entry is immense. You can't just wander into this greenhouse. You need an invitation, which is predicated on your own status, wealth, or power. The social events are not neighborhood potlucks. They are high-stakes gatherings at places like the World Economic Forum, exclusive charity galas, or on the deck of a superyacht in Monaco. The conversations are about global markets and billion-dollar deals, not local school board meetings or whose turn it is to carpool.
This creates a feedback loop. Because they only socialize with peers, their understanding of the world becomes skewed. The problems and priorities of their circle become, in their minds, the problems of the world. The concerns of an average person, job security, the rising cost of groceries, fixing a leaky roof, become abstract data points rather than lived realities shared by their friends and neighbors.
And that leads directly to our next point, which is the erosion of that community garden I mentioned. For most people, those little interdependencies are the soil of social life. You ask a neighbor to watch your house while you're away, a friend gives you a ride to the airport, family members help each other with childcare. These small acts of mutual reliance build trust and connection.
But for the ultra-wealthy, there is a paid solution for every one of those needs. You don't ask a neighbor to keep an eye on things. You have a state-of-the-art monitored security system and private patrols. You don't need a ride to the airport. You have a chauffeur or an Uber Black on call 24/7. You certainly don't rely on family for childcare. You employ a team of nannies.
It's the principle of transactional efficiency applied to social life. Why engage in the sometimes messy, obligation-filled process of asking for a favor when you can simply pay to have the problem solved instantly and professionally? It's logical, but it comes at a cost. A study highlighted this trend, showing that affluent individuals are far more likely to buy these services that communities used to provide for each other.
Imagine the social fabric of a neighborhood. For an average person, that fabric is woven together by thousands of tiny reciprocal threads. I'll lend you my lawnmower. You can give me a hand with this heavy box. It creates a strong, resilient net of social capital. In the world of the super-rich, many of those threads are replaced with clean, efficient, but cold, hard wires of commerce. The service is rendered, payment is made, and the interaction is over. There's no lingering social bond.
That's a perfect analogy. The result is that while their homes might be physically located within a neighborhood, they aren't truly a part of its social ecosystem. They may not know their neighbors' names, let alone their struggles or joys. Their support system isn't next door, it's on their payroll. This creates a profound sense of detachment from the very community they live in.
This detachment may also have deeper psychological consequences. This is where we get into some really fascinating and admittedly sensitive research. Multiple studies have suggested a correlation between immense wealth and a diminished capacity for compassion, or at least a lower interest in casual social engagement with those outside their circle.
It's important to be nuanced here. This isn't to say that all wealthy people are uncompassionate. Many are incredibly philanthropic. However, the research points to an observable average tendency. When you are insulated from the daily struggles of others, your ability to empathize naturally atrophies. If you've never had to worry about making rent or choosing between a medical bill and a car repair, it can be genuinely difficult to emotionally connect with someone for whom that is a terrifying reality.
Psychologists talk about the concept of psychological distance. Wealth creates distance. Physical distance because you live in gated compounds and travel in private vehicles, but also psychological distance. Your life experience is so fundamentally different that the experiences of others can feel like they're happening on another planet. This can manifest in small, subtle ways.
For example, it might mean being less likely to engage in small talk with a barista or a cashier. It might mean being less attentive to the nonverbal emotional cues of others in a conversation. In a more significant context, it can translate to being emotionally distant from a relative who is struggling financially, perhaps preferring to solve the problem with a check rather than with personal time and emotional support.
The nature of their philanthropy often reflects this as well. It's frequently large-scale and data-driven, donating millions to a foundation to solve a systemic issue. This is, of course, hugely impactful, but it's a different form of engagement than, say, a middle-income person who spends every Saturday volunteering at a local food bank, getting to know the people they are helping on a personal level. One is a top-down systemic solution, the other is a bottom-up personal connection.
And society needs both, but the personal connection is what builds compassionate communities. When an entire class of people is systemically insulated from that hands-on engagement, you lose something vital. You lose their perspective, their first-hand understanding, and their potential to be advocates for change rooted in genuine empathy.
This all culminates in our final point, how their very perception of social reality is different. For the average person, anonymity is the default. You can walk into a grocery store, a pharmacy, or a park, and no one will know who you are or what you're worth. You are, for all intents and purposes, invisible in the crowd.
For a recognizable billionaire, that anonymity is a lost luxury. They are hyper-visible. Their presence changes the dynamic of any public space they enter. This leads to a strange paradox. While an average person might dream of being noticed, a super-rich person often dreams of the opposite. An aide once recounted how her boss seemed to relish the rare moments he could slip into a drugstore unnoticed, to just briefly feel like a normal person.
Think about it from their perspective. Every interaction is potentially colored by their wealth. Is this person being friendly because they genuinely like me, or because they want something? an investment, a job, a donation? That constant low-level suspicion must be exhausting, and it would naturally lead you to retreat further into your trusted, pre-vetted inner circle where you don't have to question motives.
It's like the difference between swimming in the ocean and swimming in an aquarium. For us, the social world is the vast, unpredictable ocean. We are one fish among billions. For them, it's an aquarium. The glass walls are their security and their staff. The water is filtered, and every other fish has been carefully selected to be in the tank with them. Even if they were to somehow jump into the ocean, their unique, recognizable appearance would mean they could never truly blend in with the rest of the school. They'd always be the exotic specimen everyone is staring at.
So what we see is that an extreme concentration of wealth doesn't just buy a different lifestyle, it buys a different social reality. It's a parallel universe governed by transactional relationships, insulated networks, and a constant awareness of one's own visibility. The social software is fundamentally rewritten.
It is. And the key takeaway here isn't to demonize or envy, but to understand the systemic pressures at play. The isolation, the reliance on paid services, the psychological distance. These are not necessarily just individual moral failings. They are often the natural, almost inevitable consequences of a system that separates individuals so profoundly from the common human experience. The structure of their life dictates the structure of their social connections.
And this highly managed, insular world, built to provide efficiency and control, logically leads to an obsession with managing external threats. When you live in a carefully constructed bubble, your primary concern becomes protecting it from bursting. This creates a deep-seated need for privacy and security that goes far beyond what most of us could ever imagine.
That's the perfect bridge to our next discussion. The social dynamics we've talked about today, the small circles, the lack of neighborhood ties, the public visibility, all feed into a deep concern for safety.
Exactly. In our next episode, we will venture inside the fortress. We'll explore the world of billionaire privacy and security, from the tactical teams of bodyguards and armored vehicles to the complex web of offshore accounts and blind trusts used to shield their fortunes and their families from a world they perceive as full of threats. It's a reality where safety isn't just a feeling, it's a multi-million-dollar industry. Join us next time on The Billionaire's Life.
Welcome to The Billionaire's Life. In our last episode, we explored the exclusive social circles of the ultra-wealthy, the networks they build, and the communities they form. But it raises a fascinating question. If your life is lived within such gilded, well-connected circles, how do you protect yourself from the world outside of them? It's a paradox, to be so visible, so known, yet to live a life that is intensely, almost obsessively private.
Exactly. It's a fundamental shift in perception. For most people, privacy is the default state. We lock our doors at night, we might have a home security system, but we don't live with a constant managed sense of threat. For a billionaire, privacy isn't a state of being. It's an active, ongoing, and incredibly expensive project. It's the difference between buying a lock for your door and building a fortress. Today, we're going to deconstruct that fortress. We'll look at the physical safety concerns that dictate their daily lives, how this intense security extends to their loved ones, the complex web of financial secrecy they weave, and the constant curation of their public image.
Let's start with the most visceral aspect, physical safety. When your net worth is public knowledge and has more digits than a phone number, the threats you face are fundamentally different. It's not just about random crime. We're talking about targeted threats. Kidnapping, extortion, assault. Security for high net worth individuals is a specialized field modeled after the protective services for heads of state, like the U.S. Secret Service.
The fortress analogy is quite literal here. An average person's home security might be a smart doorbell and a deadbolt. A billionaire's residence is what the industry calls a secure compound. Think high walls, motion sensors, panic rooms, and a 24/7 staff of close protection officers. These aren't just guards. They're highly trained professionals, often with backgrounds in special forces or federal law enforcement. Their job is proactive and preventative, involving threat assessments, route planning, and advanced sweeps of any location the principal plans to visit. A full executive protection team can cost upwards of $2 million a year.
And this extends beyond the home. Take their vehicles. It's not uncommon for billionaires to use armored cars for daily transport. You can buy a civilian armored BMW or Mercedes that looks standard on the outside, but can withstand fire from an AK-47 and even small explosions. These vehicles can feature reinforced steel bodies, ballistic glass several inches thick, run-flat tires, and even independent sealed oxygen supplies. This isn't for show. It's a direct response to a perceived level of risk that most of us can barely imagine. While an average person worries about a car break-in, a billionaire has to plan for a coordinated ambush.
This intense security apparatus naturally extends to family, especially children, and this is where the human cost becomes starkly visible. The primary concern for ultra-wealthy parents is often the risk of kidnapping. As a result, their children's lives are managed with extraordinary precautions. It creates a dynamic often referred to as the golden cage. The child has every material advantage imaginable, but their freedom is severely curtailed.
You rarely, if ever, see a billionaire's young child walking down the street or playing in a public park. Their world is a curated series of secure locations: the private school, the members-only club, the protected family estate. Travel is in chauffeured, often armored cars. Some security-conscious parents even enroll their kids in elite schools under different last names to maintain a lower profile. While there's a debate about the psychological impact of such a restrictive upbringing, the motivation is clear: to make their children as invisible as possible to potential threats.
And it's a stark contrast to the average family's experience. An average parent teaches their child to look both ways before crossing the street and not to talk to strangers. A billionaire parent might have to teach their child security protocols, what to do if a car follows them, and how to interact with their personal bodyguard, who might be posing as a tutor or nanny. Many celebrities who live in the public eye make a conscious choice to never show their children's faces on social media to protect their privacy and safety. It's a completely different reality.
This leads us from physical security to another, more abstract form of protection: financial secrecy. If immense physical wealth creates physical threats, the very data of that wealth creates its own set of vulnerabilities. This is why billionaires go to extraordinary lengths to obscure their financial footprint.
This is where we move from fortress walls to a labyrinth of legal and financial structures. For most people, finances are fairly transparent. Your salary is reported to tax authorities, your home purchase is a public record, your bank accounts are straightforward. For a billionaire, the goal is to create as much distance as possible between their personal identity and their assets. The primary tools for this are offshore trusts, foundations, and a complex web of shell companies.
It's important to clarify that this isn't always about illegal tax evasion, though that can be a motive. Legally, the main drivers are asset protection and privacy. By placing assets into an offshore trust, a billionaire can legally argue that they no longer own them, insulating that wealth from lawsuits, creditors, or even contentious divorce proceedings. These are financial firewalls. Using shell companies registered in jurisdictions with high secrecy, like the British Virgin Islands, they can purchase yachts, private jets, or real estate without their name ever appearing on a public document.
The analogy here is quite powerful. An average person's financial life is like an open book, or perhaps a book in a language only the government can read fluently. A billionaire's financial life is a library of books, written in code, scattered across the globe, with many volumes intentionally mislabeled or attributed to pseudonyms. A single fortune might be fragmented across dozens of entities in different countries. The goal is to make a complete picture impossible to assemble for any outsider. This secrecy directly impacts their daily life. They control vast resources without the direct, public-facing ownership that would attract unwanted attention.
And that unwanted attention is the final piece of the puzzle: the management of public image. Financial secrecy and physical security are both in service of a larger goal, which is to control the narrative. For the average person, their public image is largely authentic, a collection of social media posts, community interactions, and personal relationships. For many of the ultra-rich, their public image is a carefully constructed facade.
It's a brand management exercise applied to a human being. A billionaire's social media presence, if they have one at all, is often run by a communications team. The content is strategic, designed to project a certain image: the philanthropist, the innovator, the family man. This is in stark contrast to the average person who uses social media to openly share personal views, vacation photos, and daily minutiae. This curation is another layer of security, protecting them from reputational damage, public backlash, or saying something that could make them or their company a target.
One aide to a billionaire mentioned that their boss rarely, if ever, shared personal opinions even with senior staff. This level of informational discipline is constant. They avoid unscheduled interviews, they may use anonymous accounts to observe online discourse, and they operate under a code of discretion. This desire for privacy extends to every facet of life, even leisure. A prime example is how they vacation. While an average family might stay at a busy resort, sharing a pool and dining hall with hundreds of others, the wealthy demand total seclusion.
There's an account of a billionaire who, when traveling with family, requested that the resort provide separate, silent villas for each individual family member. This wasn't about animosity. It was about maintaining an extreme form of personal space and privacy, even from each other. That level of isolation is a luxury few can afford, and perhaps even fewer would desire. It really underscores the central theme of our discussion today. For the average person, privacy is a natural state that we occasionally give up. For a billionaire, privacy is an artificial state that must be constantly, expensively, and meticulously built and defended against the outside world.
It's a profound difference in the texture of daily life. The freedom that immense wealth provides is, in many ways, curtailed by the complex fortress required to protect it. And that fortress travels with them. This deep dive into privacy and security sets the stage perfectly for our next episode, where we explore the billionaire's global lifestyle. We'll look at how they traverse the planet in a bubble of customized luxury, from private jets that eliminate the hassles of public airports to exotic experiences that are entirely inaccessible to the rest of us. We'll dissect what it truly means to be a global citizen when you can bypass all the systems and structures the average traveler must navigate. Welcome to the billionaire's life. Last week, we delved into the fortified world of the ultra-wealthy, exploring the lengths they go to ensure their privacy and security. It was a conversation about building walls. Today, we're exploring what happens when they move beyond those walls.
Exactly. If last week was about their stationary fortresses, today is about their mobile ones. We're dissecting the world of billionaire travel and the global lifestyle it enables. It's a world where the planet doesn't just feel smaller, it becomes a personalized playground. We'll look at the mechanics of their private travel, the exclusivity of their experiences, the near-infinite level of customization, the essential role of their traveling staff, and even how these dynamics reshape the family vacation itself.
This isn't just a continuation of our discussion on privacy, it's the application of those principles on a global scale. The core question we're tackling is this: when money removes every conceivable barrier to movement, how does it fundamentally change the human experience of seeing the world? Does it enhance it, or does it merely insulate them from it?
That's the heart of it. Let's start with the most visible symbol of this lifestyle, the private jet. For billionaires, private aviation isn't merely a luxury, it's a strategic tool. It's about reclaiming the one resource even they can't buy more of: time. They fly to avoid lines, to create their own schedules, to hold meetings in the sky, and to land at smaller, more exclusive airfields closer to their final destination.
It's a fundamental shift in control. For the average person, travel is an exercise in surrender. You surrender to the airline schedule, the airport's layout, the security protocols. It's a series of cues and compromises. For a billionaire, that entire system is bypassed. One expert noted that for the ultra-wealthy, flying commercial isn't just an inconvenience, it's unthinkable. It's about total command over their environment.
A great way to think about it is to compare it to ground transportation. Most of us take the bus or the train. It runs on a fixed route, on a fixed schedule, and you share the space with everyone else. A billionaire doesn't just own a car. They have a personal driver on call 24/7 who can take them anywhere, instantly, with no notice. That's what a private jet is. Flight staff for charter companies report being on constant standby, ready to drop everything for a last-minute flight to anywhere in the world. The jet becomes a seamless extension of their home or office.
And the experience on board reflects that. It's not about choosing between chicken or fish. It's about having your favorite specific meals from your favorite restaurant waiting for you, whether that's caviar or a McDonald's hamburger. We're talking about aircraft that are less like planes and more like flying penthouses, complete with bedrooms, executive offices, and entertainment systems that rival high-end home theaters.
Once they've perfected the how of travel, the where becomes equally boundless. We're not talking about a 5-star resort in a popular tourist destination. We're talking about destinations and experiences that are fundamentally inaccessible to the public. Think of chartering one of the world's largest super yachts for a summer in the Mediterranean, or renting an entire private island in the Caribbean to ensure total seclusion.
The key word here is exclusivity. It's not just about avoiding crowds, it's about ensuring that the experience is entirely their own. We see this in the trend of booking out entire wings or even the entirety of small luxury hotels. The goal is to experience a place without the presence of other guests, transforming a public space into a private domain.
And this has given rise to the concept of quiet luxury in travel. It's a move away from flashy, branded experiences toward discreet, hyper-personalized, and private retreats. Affluent travel planners note that clients are spending enormous sums on trips that emphasize this quiet luxury. Staying in the best suites, yes, but more importantly, having unique, immersive experiences that connect them to a place without the disruptive filter of mass tourism. Instead of popular, bustling destinations, the focus shifts to secluded, pristine locations that offer peace and authenticity.
The psychological driver is fascinating. It transcends simply wanting a nice view. It's about curating reality. When you can buy out a hotel or charter a yacht, you are not just a visitor in a location, you become the temporary proprietor of that location's experience. You control the ambiance, the guest list, which is only you, and the entire narrative of the trip.
And that level of control extends to every single detail of the itinerary. For most of us, planning a trip involves fitting our desires into a pre-existing framework of what's available and affordable. For the ultra-wealthy, the framework is built around their desires. A travel agent for this clientele might have an annual budget of hundreds of thousands of dollars just to secure tables at restaurants that are supposedly fully booked for months. They don't find a reservation, they create one.
It's bespoke creation versus off-the-rack selection. The average traveler chooses from a menu of options. The billionaire hands the chef a list of ingredients and expects a unique masterpiece. This is why their itineraries can be so specific. Menus are designed around their personal, often very strict nutrition plans. Private guides are not just tour leaders, but world-renowned experts in art, history, or whatever subject interests the client.
It's like commissioning a couture gown versus buying a dress at a department store. The average vacation is the dress you find on the rack. It's well made, it looks good, but it was designed for a general audience. A billionaire's vacation is the couture gown. Every stitch is planned, every measurement is precise, and the final product is a one-of-a-kind creation designed for a single individual. They can shut down Versailles for a private dinner or arrange a personal breakfast atop the Arc de Triomphe. The world's landmarks become private venues.
This level of service requires a significant support system, which brings us to the next point. Billionaires rarely, if ever, travel alone. They travel with an entourage. This isn't just family, it's a professional staff designed to make the transition from home to anywhere in the world completely seamless.
Absolutely. The entourage can include private security, a personal chef who knows their dietary needs, nannies and tutors for the children to ensure their education isn't disrupted, personal assistants, and even fitness trainers. One private jet attendant noted how their role often blurred, becoming a cook, a cleaner, and a childcare provider all in one flight. This means the infrastructure that runs their life doesn't get left behind. It gets packed up and brought along.
The implication is that they never truly have to adapt to a new environment. The bubble they inhabit at home, a world of frictionless, on-demand service, is simply transplanted to a new geographic location. It ensures maximum efficiency and comfort, but one has to wonder if it sacrifices the very essence of travel, which is often about navigating the unfamiliar and stepping outside your comfort zone.
And this dynamic has a profound impact on the family itself. When you travel with a full staff, the nature of a family vacation changes dramatically. For most families, a trip is a time of shared responsibility. Packing the car, navigating a new city, deciding where to eat, these small shared challenges are often what forge the most lasting bonds.
But when every need is anticipated and met by a paid professional, what happens to that dynamic? It can lead to a more isolated experience, even within the family unit. The most extreme, yet telling example we've come across is the billionaire family that, when on vacation, requested separate, silent villas for each family member. This wasn't just about seeking privacy from the outside world, but from each other.
It's the ultimate paradox. They travel across the world to be in the same place, only to erect invisible walls between themselves. The children are with the nannies, the parents might be pursuing separate hobbies with private guides, and they all reconvene for a perfectly prepared meal by their private chef. It's a collection of individual itineraries running in parallel, rather than a single shared journey.
It leads us back to our central theme. For the average person, travel is an act of engagement with the world as it is. It's about adapting, compromising, and discovering. For the billionaire, travel is often the act of imposing their world onto a new location. It is the ultimate expression of control, where the globe is not a vast, unpredictable place to be explored, but a set of stunning backdrops against which their curated life can unfold.
The key takeaway is that the greatest luxury in their travel isn't the thread count of the sheets or the speed of the jet. It's the ability to eliminate friction. Every inconvenience, every queue, every compromise, every moment of uncertainty that defines travel for the vast majority of us is systematically engineered out of their experience. This creates a seamless, perfect, and perhaps sterile version of travel, one that fundamentally alters its purpose from discovery to consumption.
And this power to reshape their immediate environment naturally extends to a desire to reshape the world on a much larger scale. When you can command this level of global mobility and influence, the next logical step is to consider your impact and legacy.
Which sets the stage perfectly for our next episode. We'll be exploring the complex world of billionaire philanthropy and the search for purpose. How does this same mindset of control and customized impact apply when they decide to give their money away? We'll dissect the scale, the motivations, and the controversies surrounding how the ultra-wealthy try to change the world. Join us next time on The Billionaire's Life.
Welcome to The Billionaire's Life. In our last episode, we journeyed across the globe, exploring a world of private jets and custom-built experiences, where travel isn't just about a destination, but about bending the world to one's will. But a fascinating question arises from that level of boundless consumption. What happens when you can have anything, go anywhere, and do anything? What is left to pursue? This leads us to a paradox at the heart of immense wealth: the drive to give it away.
Exactly. It's a transition from a life of acquisition to a life of distribution. And it's not just about writing a check. Today, we're dissecting the world of billionaire philanthropy and the profound search for purpose that often drives it. We'll explore the staggering scale of their giving and how it fundamentally differs from the charity of an average person. We will delve into the complex web of motivations behind these colossal gifts. Is it altruism, strategy, or something else entirely? We'll also examine the specific areas they choose to focus on, the intense public scrutiny and critiques that come with such influence, and finally, how philanthropy becomes a powerful tool for crafting a lasting legacy.
These aren't just side topics. They're central to understanding the modern billionaire. Moving beyond the acquisition of wealth, which we've discussed in terms of business and investment, this is about the deployment of that wealth on a societal scale. It's where personal belief systems, public image, and immense power intersect, creating a dynamic that is both awe-inspiring and deeply controversial.
It is. And to grasp it, we have to start with the sheer scale. It's almost impossible for most of us to conceptualize. When an average middle-class family donates, say, $1,000 to a cause they care about, it's a significant, heartfelt gesture. It might fund a local food bank for a week or help a specific family in need. It's tangible and direct.
But for a billionaire, the equivalent gesture isn't just a larger check. It's on a completely different plane of existence. A $1,000 donation from someone with a net worth of, let's say, $100,000 is 1% of their worth. For a billionaire, that same 1% is $10 million. We're not just adding zeros, we're changing the very nature of the act.
Precisely. It's the difference between buying a single brick and funding the entire cathedral. Think of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's work on global health. They aren't just donating to existing vaccine programs, they are underwriting the global infrastructure for vaccine development and distribution, aiming to eradicate diseases like polio and malaria. Or Warren Buffett's pledge to give away the vast majority of his fortune, with enormous sums going to the Gates Foundation. These aren't donations, they are strategic, global interventions.
This scale also changes the impact. A small donation helps a person. A mega donation can reshape an entire industry or public policy in a developing nation. It moves from direct aid to systemic engineering. The impact is proportional to the wealth, and that proportionality creates a level of influence that is hard to overstate. It's a form of power that operates outside of traditional democratic structures.
Which brings us directly to the next critical question. Why do they do it? The public narrative, often framed by the billionaires themselves, is one of giving back, a sense of responsibility to society for the good fortune they've had. And there's no doubt that for many, there's a genuine altruistic impulse at play.
But it's never that simple, is it? There's a powerful strategic element as well. The tax benefits, for instance, are enormous. Donating highly appreciated assets like stock to a private foundation can allow one to bypass capital gains taxes while receiving a charitable deduction for the full market value. It's an incredibly efficient financial strategy.
It is, and it's a strategy most regular donors simply don't engage with. The average person giving to their church or a local GoFundMe isn't typically structuring the donation to optimize their tax burden for the next decade. Their motivation is more direct and less entangled with financial planning. For billionaires, philanthropy and financial strategy are often two sides of the same coin. There's also the element of influence. Funding a university wing or a research institute doesn't just advance a cause. It buys access, shapes curricula, and influences the direction of research for generations.
And there's the public relations aspect. In an age of rising inequality, large-scale philanthropy can soften a billionaire's public image, recasting them from a ruthless capitalist to a benevolent figure. Yet it's interesting that many also choose to give quietly. One insider who worked with multiple billionaires noted that they donated well and often, but usually without any fanfare, through private foundations or anonymous gifts.
That points to a more complex motivational landscape. It suggests that for some, it isn't about the public recognition, but about a deeply held personal belief, or perhaps a desire to exert influence without attracting scrutiny. A private foundation gives the donor complete control over where the money goes and how it's used, often with very little public transparency. This is a stark contrast to the average person who gives to a public charity like the Red Cross or Doctors Without Borders and trusts that organization to allocate the funds. The billionaire often becomes the organization.
That leads us to what they choose to fund. If an average person's giving is often local and needs-based, the local animal shelter, the school bake sale, the community food bank, billionaire philanthropy is frequently driven by personal passion projects on a global scale.
Absolutely. It's often an extension of their own life story or business interests. A tech billionaire might launch a massive initiative to promote STEM education and coding skills. A magnate who has had a personal experience with a specific disease might pour billions into finding a cure for that one ailment. They aren't just supporting causes, they are creating them. They might launch a multi-million-dollar science center or a global health program from scratch, based entirely on their personal vision.
This approach has immense potential for good. It can direct huge resources to overlooked problems and innovate in ways that slower, more bureaucratic public institutions cannot. But it also means that philanthropic capital is allocated based on the whims and interests of a tiny handful of individuals, rather than on democratically determined public needs.
It's like having a private citizen with a budget larger than many countries' GDP deciding what the world's most pressing problems are and how to solve them. The focus is a reflection of their personal worldview. An average person supports their local school because their child goes there, and they see a direct need for new books or a playground. A billionaire might decide to reinvent the entire educational model for a country based on their theories of learning. The scale of their ambition is as vast as their resources.
And this is where the conversation gets very complicated. This level of influence inevitably invites critique and questions of accountability. When one person's donation can alter the course of public health or education for millions, it's no longer just a private act of charity. It becomes a matter of public concern.
Right. There's a robust debate among experts about the role of this philanthrocapitalism. Some argue that it's an incredibly effective and efficient way to solve problems, but others raise serious concerns. Critics point out that this private influence can undermine public institutions and democratic processes. A foundation's priorities might not align with the public, yet their financial power can drown out other voices.
Even some of the biggest donors acknowledge this tension. Bill Gates himself has noted that the role of philanthropy is not to replace government funding. He understands that even his foundation's billions are a drop in the bucket compared to what governments can and should be spending on public goods. The danger is when philanthropy starts to be seen as a substitute for a robust public sector and fair taxation.
And the average person is completely removed from this debate. When they make a donation, their primary concern is whether the charity is reputable and if the money will be used effectively for its stated purpose. They aren't worried that their $50 gift to an animal shelter will fundamentally warp national policy on animal welfare. For billionaires, that kind of systemic impact is a real and constant consideration, both for them and for their critics. The accountability structure is just fundamentally different.
This all culminates in the final, perhaps most personal aspect of billionaire philanthropy, its role in shaping a legacy. For most people, giving is a quiet, often anonymous act. You volunteer at a soup kitchen, you donate to a holiday toy drive. The recognition is minimal, and that's not the point. The act itself is the reward.
But in the world of the super rich, philanthropy is often a very public performance. We see this with high-profile charity galas, where tables can cost $100,000. These aren't just fundraisers, they are major social events where status and influence are displayed. It's a world away from a community bake sale.
And then there's the most literal form of legacy building, naming rights. We see it everywhere. University buildings, hospital wings, museum galleries, all bearing the names of their benefactors. It's a way to achieve a form of immortality, to etch your name into the physical and cultural landscape for centuries.
It's the ultimate act of shaping your own narrative. After a lifetime of building a business empire, philanthropy becomes the tool to write the final chapter of your story, ensuring you are remembered not just for how you made your money, but for how you gave it away. It transforms a personal fortune into a public legacy, cementing a family's name in the history books as patrons and visionaries.
For the average person, legacy is found in their children, their community work, the memories of those they helped. For a billionaire, it can be a 10-story building of granite and glass.
So we see this incredible arc, from a purely financial act to a deeply personal and intensely public quest for meaning and permanence. It's a world where a single person's checkbook can have the power of a small nation-state, driven by a mixture of genuine altruism, strategic calculation, and the universal human desire to leave a mark.
It truly is. And this quest for purpose through philanthropy raises an even deeper question. Does it work? Does engineering a legacy and giving away billions actually bring a sense of peace and fulfillment? Or does it simply introduce a new set of pressures and anxieties?
That is the perfect question to lead us into our next episode. Having explored their external world, their homes, their travel, and now their societal impact, we're going to turn inward. We'll explore the billionaire mindset itself, delving into the often hidden realities of trust, profound loneliness, and the complex relationship between immense wealth and genuine happiness. It's a look at the one thing money can't necessarily buy, a sense of well-being.
Welcome to the Billionaire's Life. In our last episode, we explored the grand, world-shaping gestures of billionaire philanthropy, how the ultra-wealthy use their fortunes to sculpt a legacy. But it raises a profound question. After shaping the external world, what does their internal world look like? We've dissected their schedules, their relationships, their impact, but what is the actual human experience of living with that level of wealth?
That's the core of what we're exploring today. We're moving from the balance sheet to the brain, so to speak. It's one thing to build an empire, but it's another thing entirely to live within its walls. Today, we'll discuss the unseen psychological landscape of the super rich. We'll touch on the pervasive issues of trust and the deep-seated loneliness that often accompanies immense fortune. We'll examine the paradoxical struggle for purpose when money removes all of life's basic necessities. We'll also delve into the surprising guilt and secrecy that can surround wealth. And finally, we'll tackle the ultimate question. Does all that money actually buy happiness?
These aren't just abstract concepts. They dictate the daily reality of the individuals we're examining. Understanding their mindset is crucial because it contextualizes everything we've discussed so far. Their approach to philanthropy, which we covered last time, is often a direct response to an internal search for purpose. The way they structure their lives is a defense mechanism against the challenges of trust. It all connects.
Precisely. Let's start with that first, very human challenge, trust. For the average person, trust is the bedrock of most relationships. We trust our neighbors to grab our mail, we confide in coworkers over coffee, we maintain friendships from school for decades. These relationships are built on shared experiences and mutual vulnerability, not financial calculus.
But for a billionaire, that bedrock is fundamentally unstable. Therapists who work with the ultra-wealthy consistently report that their clients are plagued by a deep, corrosive suspicion. Every interaction is filtered through the lens of their wealth. Is this person a genuine friend, or are they angling for an investment, a connection, a handout? This constant questioning can lead to profound social withdrawal and isolation.
It's a form of psychological imprisonment. Imagine living in a beautiful mansion, but every window is a one-way mirror. You can see out, but no one can truly see in, and you can never be sure who is standing outside admiring the view versus who is casing the joint. This fear that one's wealth attracts insincere connections erects immense barriers to intimacy and genuine companionship. The result is an incredibly insular world. Their social circles shrink until they're composed almost exclusively of other wealthy individuals, family members with a vested interest, and paid staff. The casual, trusting bonds that most people take for granted simply evaporate.
And this leads directly into the second major issue, this crisis of purpose. For most of us, life has a built-in structure driven by necessity. We get up in the morning to go to work, to pay the bills, to provide for our families, to save for the future. These aren't just chores, they are foundational drivers of our daily routine and, in many ways, our sense of self-worth.
Now, strip all of that away. What happens when your business runs itself, when your investments generate more money in a day than most people earn in a lifetime, when every material need is met? A therapist who works with this demographic noted a common, haunting question from her clients. Why bother getting up? When the struggle is gone, the meaning derived from that struggle can vanish too.
It's the paradox of arrival. You spend your life climbing a mountain, laser-focused on the summit. Then you get there and you realize there are no more mountains to climb. This can lead to a profound sense of emptiness, a spiritual boredom. And in that void, some turn to chasing ever more extreme thrills, while others fall into patterns of substance abuse or other self-destructive behaviors, trying to feel something in a life that has become friction-free.
It's like a performance car designed to go 200 miles per hour that is only ever driven in a school zone. All that power, all that capability has no outlet. The engine is just idling. This search for purpose is why we see so many billionaires pivot to philanthropy, as we discussed. It's an attempt to find a new mountain, to apply that immense capacity to problems of a global scale. But it's also a response to another complex emotion tied to their wealth.
The guilt and secrecy aspect is fascinating because it seems so counterintuitive. We live in a culture that glorifies wealth, yet many who possess it are deeply uncomfortable with it. There's often a feeling that the money is somehow dirty or that discussing it is taboo. They become masters of concealment.
For the average person, conversations about money, well, sometimes awkward, are common. People might discuss a recent raise with friends, complain about the cost of living, or share tips on saving for a down payment. There's a communal aspect to our financial lives. For the ultra-rich, it's the opposite. Financial details are a closely guarded secret, even from family. This isn't just about security. It's often rooted in shame or a fear of being judged. Some feel an odd sense of guilt for their unearned privilege, especially if the wealth was inherited. This can manifest as luxury shame, where individuals actively downplay their financial status to avoid seeming out of touch.
It creates a strange dichotomy where they live in opulent splendor but can never speak of the engine that powers it. This secrecy further reinforces their isolation. If you can't talk about one of the most significant factors shaping your reality, how can you form a truly authentic connection with someone?
You can't. It becomes another wall in that mansion of one-way mirrors. This brings us to the ultimate question we posed at the start. With all these psychological burdens, the loneliness, the boredom, the guilt, are they even happy?
The research on this is incredibly nuanced. A notable study that interviewed a number of billionaires found that, on average, they do report being happier than the general population. However, and this is the critical part, the happiness doesn't come from the money itself, the cars, the houses, the material possessions. It comes from the autonomy that money provides. Wealth gives them the freedom to control their time, to pursue their interests, and to live life on their own terms.
Exactly. Money is not a direct source of happiness, but a powerful tool for removing sources of unhappiness. An average person might be stressed about a sudden car repair bill or a looming mortgage payment. A billionaire is insulated from those anxieties, but that's where the benefit plateaus. Beyond that, personality and the quality of one's relationships become the primary drivers of well-being. Research from Harvard on 4,000 millionaires showed that individuals with a net worth over $10 million were indeed happier than those with $1 or $2 million, but the difference was modest.
There's a significant price to pay for that freedom. The same study noted the immense costs, chronic work-related stress, the pressure of being available 24/7 for a global business, and the profound loneliness at the top we've been discussing. Essentially, money acts as an amplifier for one's underlying disposition.
That's the perfect analogy. Money is an amplifier. If you're a generally happy, well-adjusted person, wealth can amplify that by giving you more opportunities for joy and fulfillment. But if you are prone to anxiety, insecurity, or depression, wealth can amplify those traits into a deafening roar. The pressure intensifies, the stakes are higher, and the isolation makes it harder to cope. The fear of losing it all becomes a constant source of stress.
This leads to a final, crucial point about perspective. We often look at billionaires with aspiration, assuming their lives are an unqualified upgrade from our own. But the reality is far more complex.
There's a story I heard from an executive assistant who worked for a notoriously difficult, perpetually miserable billionaire for several years. She described a life of unimaginable luxury, private jets, sprawling estates, exclusive access to everything, all inhabited by a man who was consumed by anxiety and suspicion. After she finally quit, she said the most overwhelming feeling she had was a profound appreciation for her own life. The ability to trust her friends, the simple joy of a quiet evening without a crisis, the freedom of walking down the street unrecognized.
It's a powerful reminder that a grounded, fulfilling life is not contingent on accumulating billions. While the freedom and autonomy that wealth provides are certainly desirable, they are not a guarantee of well-being. The very things that many people take for granted, genuine community, a clear sense of purpose derived from daily responsibilities, and trusting relationships, are often the very things that extreme wealth can erode.
And recognizing that distinction is key. It allows us to separate the truly valuable aspects of a successful life from the superficial trappings of wealth. The goal shouldn't be to have $1 billion, but perhaps to cultivate the autonomy and purpose that billionaires seek, often in vain, through their fortunes.
Which is the perfect place to leave our listeners thinking. We've journeyed through the external realities and now the internal mindsets of the ultra-wealthy. We've seen the immense power and the hidden pitfalls. In our next and final episode of the series, we'll tie it all together. We'll distill the practical lessons and takeaways from this entire exploration, asking what habits and mindsets of the super-rich can we actually emulate, and what parts of their lives should serve as cautionary tales. It will be about balancing ambition with the core values that truly define a rich life. Welcome, for one final time, to the Billionaire's Life. Over the past 9 episodes, we've pulled back the curtain on a world few ever get to see. We've dissected the daily schedules, the investment strategies, the societal impact, and, most recently, the complex inner lives of the ultra-wealthy. We explored the deep currents of loneliness and the search for purpose that often accompany immense fortunes, revealing that a billion-dollar bank account is no guarantee of a happy life.
Exactly. That conversation about mindset and well-being was a crucial turning point in our series. It demonstrated that beyond the jets and the boardrooms, there lies a human reality filled with the same and sometimes amplified struggles we all face. It begged the ultimate question, one we plan to answer today. After all this exploration, what are the real lessons? What can we, in our own lives, take away from the billionaire experience? Today, we're distilling this entire journey into actionable insights and profound reflections. We'll talk about the habits worth emulating, the crucial limits to recognize, and the timeless importance of a balanced life. And, of course, we'll touch upon the public's endless fascination with the weird and wonderful specifics of their lives.
It's about building a final, comprehensive picture. We started with the tangible, the day-to-day differences. We then moved to the psychological, the mindset, and the emotional costs. Now we reflect on what it all means for the rest of us. We're not just looking at their lives anymore. We're looking at what their lives can teach us about our own.
And a great place to start is with the most practical question. What can we actually copy? It's easy to dismiss their habits as products of their wealth, but many of their most powerful tools are, at their core, accessible strategies for effectiveness. The key is to separate the principle from the price tag. For instance, the ultra-rich have an almost religious devotion to protecting their time and focus. They build their days around uninterrupted blocks for deep work, a practice anyone can adopt.
That's a critical point. We see a CEO clearing their schedule for a 3-hour strategy session and think it's a luxury. But the underlying principle is simply prioritizing high-value cognitive work. For someone else, that might look like turning off phone notifications for 90 minutes every morning to focus on their most important task. It's the same discipline, just on a different scale. The billionaire hires a massive support staff to handle every conceivable distraction, from making dinner reservations to managing their household. Most of us can't do that, but we can adopt the mindset of leverage.
It's like looking at a professional kitchen. A Michelin star chef has a team of sous chefs, each dedicated to one specific task. One chops the vegetables, another prepares the sauces. This frees the head chef to focus purely on the creative vision and the final execution. The average home cook works alone, but they can still apply the principle of mise en place, prepping all your ingredients before you start cooking. It's a small-scale version of the same idea. Organize your resources to protect your flow and focus. Hiring a part-time virtual assistant for 5 hours a week to handle scheduling and administrative tasks can be a surprisingly affordable way to back focus. It's not about having a butler, it's about strategically delegating to reclaim your most valuable asset, your time.
This extends to talent as well. Billionaires are masters at identifying and empowering A-level talent to run their companies. They understand they can't be an expert in everything. For the average person, this principle of hiring expertise is just as relevant. It could mean engaging a financial advisor instead of trying to navigate the market alone, or hiring a skilled tradesperson for a home repair rather than spending a frustrating weekend on a DIY project that ends up costing more in the long run. It's an investment in efficiency and excellence, a trait that's mindset-dependent, not wealth-dependent.
But this is where the conversation needs a crucial dose of reality. For every habit we can adapt, there are a dozen aspects of their lives that are fundamentally unattainable and, frankly, undesirable to emulate. This is the second and perhaps more important lesson, recognizing the limits. The ability to travel on a private jet isn't a habit to be learned. It's a consequence of having more money than you can spend. Conflating the two is a recipe for frustration.
It's the classic correlation versus causation error. People see a successful person waking up at 4 a.m. and assume the early wake-up call caused the success. But they miss the 1,000 other factors: the discipline, the vision, the risk-taking, the team they built. The private jet saves time, yes, but the truly aspirational quality is the ruthless desire to save time in the first place, which can be achieved in countless other ways. The discipline to stick to a budget is far more powerful for most people than the ability to own a jet. The vision to map out a 5-year career plan is more valuable than having a mega yacht.
Think of it as the difference between an athlete's tools and their talent. You can buy the most expensive basketball shoes on the market, the same ones LeBron James wears, but those shoes won't give you his court vision, his work ethic, or his physical gifts. The shoes are the wealth-dependent part. The relentless practice, the study of the game, the years of dedication, that's the mindset-dependent part. We should be inspired by the dedication, not distracted by the shoes. Our society often focuses on the shoes of the super rich, the mansions, the parties, the exotic toys, because it's more entertaining, but the real lessons are in their mental and operational training regimen.
And that regimen comes at a cost, which brings us to the core of our series. All these habits and mindsets are deployed in service of a goal, usually the accumulation of more wealth and power. But as we explored last time, that singular focus can hollow out other essential parts of life. This brings us to the idea of balance. The stories of billionaire loneliness, of families torn apart by inheritance disputes, of the perpetual boredom that sets in when you can have anything you want, these serve as powerful cautionary tales.
They are cautionary tales. They teach us that while we should absolutely dream big and pursue our ambitions with vigor, we must anchor that ambition in a foundation of human values. Strong relationships, a sense of purpose beyond profit, and the ability to find contentment in the everyday, these are not consolation prizes for failing to become a billionaire. They are the very definition of a rich life, a form of wealth that money can't buy, and in some cases, actively corrodes. We hear stories of the super rich who are so isolated they have to pay people to spend time with them, creating a synthetic version of the genuine community most people build naturally throughout their lives.
The research we've seen bears this out. Extreme wealth tends to magnify a person's baseline personality. If you are a generally happy and well-adjusted person, money can give you more freedom to express that. But if you are prone to anxiety, insecurity, or unhappiness, $1 billion can become a billion sources of new anxiety. It's a magnifying glass for your own character. So the takeaway isn't to abandon ambition, but to pursue it with a clear-eyed understanding of what truly constitutes a successful life.
A successful life is one of integration, not just accumulation. It's weaving together your professional drive with your personal connections, your financial goals with your ethical principles. It's about building a life that is robust and fulfilling across multiple domains, not just the one that shows up on a bank statement. The billionaire lifestyle, by its very nature, often demands a level of sacrifice in those other domains that most people would and should find unacceptable.
Of course, it's not all philosophy and cautionary tales. Let's be honest, part of the appeal of this topic is the sheer spectacle. We are endlessly fascinated by the details, especially the bizarre ones. It's why articles about the most insane billionaire requests or their tipping habits go viral. These stories, while entertaining, also offer a glimpse into a psychology shaped by a world without limits.
They really do. There are famous stories, for example, of billionaires demanding that their hotel rooms be completely refurnished to their exact specifications for a one-night stay, or requesting that a rare out-of-season fruit be flown halfway across the world for a midnight snack. On one level, it's absurd, but on another, it reveals a profound detachment from reality. When you never hear the word no, your sense of what is reasonable or possible becomes warped. These anecdotes aren't just fun gossip. They are case studies in what happens to the human mind when all practical constraints are removed.
The tipping habits are another fascinating window. There's a persistent narrative, backed by many service industry workers, that the super rich are often the worst tippers. It seems counterintuitive, but it speaks to a mindset where every transaction is analyzed for its value, or perhaps a life so insulated from normal financial interactions that the social custom of tipping simply doesn't register in the same way. It's another small example of the disconnect that can emerge. These stories matter because they humanize the topic and make it more accessible. They transform abstract concepts of wealth into concrete, relatable, and often very funny real-world examples.
And that brings us full circle to the overall narrative we've tried to build across this entire series. We started this journey by examining the tangible, everyday routines, what they eat, how they manage their calendars. From there, we widened the lens to explore their mindset, their relationship with risk, failure, and even their own happiness. Finally, we looked at their broader societal role, their philanthropy, and their complex legacy. Each episode was designed to be a standalone exploration, but together they form a comprehensive mosaic.
A mosaic that we hope has provided a truly in-depth understanding of how extreme wealth shapes every facet of a life, from the moment the alarm clock rings in the morning to the philanthropic foundations that will carry their name for generations. It's a reality far more complex and nuanced than the caricatures we often see in popular culture. It's not just about success, it's about the systems, the psychology, and the profound sacrifices that underpin that success.
Ultimately, the greatest lesson from studying the billionaire's life is about how to live our own. It's about being more intentional. It's about taking their incredible focus and applying it to what matters to us. It's about adopting their long-term vision, but pointing it toward a personalized definition of success that includes community, connection, and contentment. It's about building a life that is not just financially sound, but emotionally and spiritually rich. You don't need $1 billion to live a life of immense value. In fact, as we've seen, the pursuit of that billion can sometimes get in the way. The real wealth is found in building a life that you wouldn't trade for anyone else's, no matter the price.
A perfect place to leave it. This series has been a journey into a world of extremes, but its true value lies in the reflections it holds for our own everyday lives. We want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this deep dive. The fascination with this topic is endless, but our exploration, for now, has come to an end. Thank you for listening to The Billionaire's Life.